One, thank you for everybody for joining us tonight for our Mind Matters panel discussion about the how to navigate mental health in the Black communities. I think this is one of the this initiative, this program came out of the Urban League State of Black Long Island Equity Council, and it's an initiative that is, especially in the times, especially coming off of that COVID and just everything going on in our communities and coming off of the civil unrest as well. It's a much needed conversation and something that we haven't had conversation for. I know in my house, I haven't had conversations about mental health when I was young. So opening that up and stopping that same kind of repeated habit, I think what's going to get us out of there. So through our health equity action team, we came up with this initiative, part of our Long Island Health Communities Initiative, where we're just trying to change the regular stigmas, right? We want to make sure that, we promote mental health in our communities, access to healthcare and just healthy habits all around. So what is the SOBLI Equity Council? For everybody who doesn't know, our Equity Council is pretty much different community members and stakeholders in different types of organizations, whether it's faith-based, different nonprofits who come together with the goal of securing political, social, and economic equity for Black residents in Long Island. And usually when I give a plug, because we are nothing without our people, right? So if you want to keep updated and just learn more about what SOBLI does, or just join any of our action teams, or just come in to have some of our meetings, scan the QR code, and you'll be able to just get a little bit more information and join. Everything's on that link tree right there. So, oh, sorry. Sorry about this. Sorry, everybody. Oh, yeah, I thought I was sorry. Right, close it down now so I can go on. All right, this panel, we're going to learn about various mental health conditions that affect our different communities. We're going to learn how to address those and about the importance of seeking help, right? I think that last one is really important, right? We can learn about everything, but we need to really go after the help when it's well needed. But I'm going to let my experts actually speak a little bit more to that, and they're going to just be addressing some of the stigma, the challenges to access to healthcare, to access care itself and the resources, right? And the impact of mental health on individuals, families, and communities. I was going to panel this a bit, but I'm going to pull up my special moderator for today, and I'm going to let her do her thing, our CEO and president of the Urban League, Urban League of Long Island, Teresa Sanders, and then I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves as well as we go. Oh, I'm going to stand up here. Yeah. I'm sorry. Rewind. I'm sorry. So I'm having our panelists introduce themselves. I think it's a little more generic. Just tell us nothing too big. Tell us a little bit about yourselves and your background, and what brings you here today. Why did you decide to accept to be part of the panel? So Eugenia, I'm gonna start with you.
Hello, my name is Eugenia Woods, and I am a parent of 4 children, 1 grandchild, and I'm just glad to be here. Honored to be here amongst all the great minds, and just sharing about different aspects that have happened in my life, dealing with certain areas of the mental health and how to get over these things, or even as a family to grow through these things. So I'm honored to be here.
So I don't know if I did this in the right order. I'm not gonna lie. I probably should have had some name tags down. But we're gonna keep making this work. Next up, we got Warren.
Good evening. My name is Warren Graham. I am Assistant Dean of Practicum Education and Clinical Associate Professor at Stony Brook University's School of Welfare. I've been a clinician for over 10 years and in private practice for over 10. And I'm here because there is a pressing need to discuss these issues of mental health in the Black community.
Thank you for joining us. And we got Brandon. Next.
Hi, yes. My name is Brandon Cannell. I am a licensed social worker practicing here on Long Island. I am also kind of an impacted person as well in my own sense, in the sense that I've struggled with mental health issues and my own mental health needs throughout my entire life. So a lot of what brought me here is just to have the ability to speak on those things and to kind of share it amongst the community that may not often have the space to talk about those things. So Yeah, that's what brought me here today.
Dr. Beckles.
Hi, I'm Nicola Beckles. I'm a psychologist. I recently retired from 33 years of work as a school psychologist in Akron. And also had a private practice for more than that length. And I am in a new phase of my life. I have time on my hands. So after COVID, after seeing how it impacted my friends in schools, I want to give back. I want to do more public speaking or sharing my knowledge. Thanks.
Last but certainly not least, you want to slow your last name over the try. Okay. Did I do it? Okay, roll. Okay.
Carl.
Oh, it's okay. I'm sorry. I really have to get my books too. But go ahead, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
My name is Chioma Okoro. I work with Central National Guidance. I direct one of the crisis center programs over at Central National Guidance. And I accepted this call to come because we do work with a great number of individuals who are undergoing mental crisis. And because of the lack of diversity with respect to our therapists and availability of those therapists in Long Island, we find that we are facing a lot of issues and problems with meeting the needs of Black and Brown people of Black and Brown affinity in the neighborhood. And so when you spoke about it and you talked about one of our directors sent me a message and said, would you like to represent CG? And I was like, absolutely. But I decided to take a call because I have a very good friend of mine who's also a member of Congress, and he's been on my case at Federal. And it's Kate Smith.
Okay.
He's a long term. He's been on my case.
Well, thank you to our panelists for being here. Now I'm going to introduce my moderator here for the day, our president and CEO, Mr. Lisa Sanders.
Thank you. I got this assignment an hour ago. But that's just feedback. What I'm to them. You know, this is a very sensitive topic. There hasn't been a meeting that I've been in the last couple of months where mental health has not come up as an issue. And I'm talking about from high level professionals to church meetings. Everybody is talking about this crisis that we're in. And I believe there was issues of mental health for years and years and years, but COVID has compounded what has happened to a lot of individuals, and it's triggered a lot of suppressed symptoms. And we just don't have enough people to deal with the level of stress that people are under. And even people that never had a mental health issue got one after COVID. So if you were locked in your house and you didn't know how you were gonna eat, or you didn't know if you were gonna die, just watching people die was traumatizing. So today we're coming to all of you because as our content expert, we want you to try to guide us because we're gonna be the ambassadors from here. We're all gonna go out, we're gonna talk to other people. We're gonna try to make sure that we replicate these webinars if we can. We've got professionals here that for coming and bring the goodies. And so we wanna talk about, and I've got a couple of questions, so I'll do my open thing, so. I won't ask any individual to speak towards something unless we trigger something. But let's talk about the unique challenges that Black people and people of color, and that's what Suffolk counties have just getting access to mental health care.
Well, I think I shared a little bit with our illustrious doctor here that I have a daughter who pays $80 every 2 weeks for her therapist. I mean, she does not have, it's not covered in her health plan. That's required now. You don't have it, you're taxed. But she understands that it's a need for her because when COVID happened, she was on the front lines. She worked in a hospital. She was seeing where the trailers come and loading up the buses. She was seeing that, and she had a relative that died right before the shutdown. So it's like those things are triggering her. But I thank God that she understands that she needs that service, but not having the access paid for it is a situation. So they'll talk about mental health, go get a therapist, go see someone. But what happens when you can't afford it? So you're walking around with all these things inside, it's basically killing you slowly. Because we all know mental health is part of your business. So if you're struggling mentally, that's trickling down. So to speak about access, that is a real problem. She's 27. So that's a problem with our young people, wanting to get some assistance, but not having a means of payment.
I should break that question down because there's a difference between access and affordability. You might be able to afford it, but if you can't find it, with the cultural confidence, somebody talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, even I feel like, cause I live in Suffolk County, Morris. It is also an issue in Nassau County, but I feel like even more so in Suffolk County is even like transportation, just trying to physically getting yourself to services. I mean, me being in Suffolk, living in Suffolk County, my parents recognized very early on I was gonna need to drive a car. But for families and individuals that can't afford a car, I mean, a bus can take you from here to 30 miles away and you don't even know what's in between those miles. So it's like, just, not only just the affordability, but even just, physically getting yourself to a space where you can. Cause even a lot of people, even with the kind of surge of, like virtual mental health, there's still a lot of people that, try it, they may not like it, it doesn't work for them. And it could be the issue, of course, of, maintenance and, and making sure you go regularly. But it could also be just needing someone in person to actually physically be across from and speak to.
So I've seen a lot of this, new wave stuff that just dial up and you can call your therapist or FaceTime, right? And so I'm not the expert, but y'all all laugh. But talk about that. Is that an effective form of therapy? I mean, we shouldn't exclude anything, but talk about that.
First, I want to talk about one of the numbers, right? What do people know? What is out there? And we find out people don't know that. So African Americans 20% more likely to develop mental illness within their lifetime. A lot of people don't know. Suicide is the third ranked reason for death between men within the ages of 15 and 24. One out of 3 Black adults who need mental health care get it. So 1 out of 3. So when you think about it, there's 3 of us here. Who's gonna get it, right? And that goes to accessibility, that goes to availability, that goes to content, because I might need it, but the ones I find might not fit. So we're not really talking about just what insurance coverage, am I paying out of pocket? Is it accessible? Is it somewhere within the community? But when I do find it, do the people match? Are they culturally competent to provide me what I need? So there's a lot of things that stop people of African American affinities going through this thing. So that's one thing. The second part is when they do agree to come, what is available to them and where is it? Now I work for CNG. And we do have lots of programs that deal with individuals coming in. I can speak to what you were speaking about, the new age therapy. We did have situations where we would talk over the phone, and that continues to change over time from when COVID happened and now. So we went from calling on the phone, FaceTiming, to now willing them to come in, because we recognize that doing that on the phone was not as effective as we wanted it to be, because we have conversations every day about how you call someone for therapy and they're in their bed, right? And that goes against the symptoms that they do have, right? Maybe one of the symptoms is having them come out of that solitude that they put themselves in, right? But if I'm under my covers and my doctor is calling me, and I don't want to get up. And so now we have to constantly change it from the first time when we did it due to COVID to now. And so now we're telling them, you have to come in. We want to see you. Right.
So telehealth has a place,
Yes.
right? It has a place, it's a tool. to use. However, a lot of the nuances of mental health treatment are in the behavior of the individuals that you're actually working with. So there's so much more that you can tell about a person, what they're going through, what they're, and how they're coping or not coping in the moment by their body language. And you lose that. So you're losing a large a significant amount of or ability to actually accept the person in front of you, on a regular basis. So while it is a tool, it should be, as far as I'm concerned, sparing. That's
So, in Black and brown communities, we all know that, there's always Uncle Joe who's just crazy. So everybody know, oh, that's just Uncle Joe in the living room, food's falling out his mouth. That's just Uncle Joe, y'all leave him alone, or that's Aunt Betty, y'all know she crazy. And they say things like that, she's crazy, right? And so as kids growing up, you internalize that and you leave that person alone because they're crazy, right? But this is not a Tyler Perry movie, it's a real life with real people. So let's talk about around helping people in our families and our communities access mental health. How do we get past this stigma?
I mean, we can start breaking down those things. What are some of those things? Shame. A lot of people of African American affinity have been groomed from slavery to have somewhere to be attuned with something that helps them, right? So spiritually, church, whether it's a church, whether it's a mosque, whether it's any form of healing, right? And like you said, clearly, we all have those people. My father used to say, in my language, he would say, the only person who is ashamed is the sister to the person who's screaming, right? So you could be crazy walking down the street, right? You don't know what's going on, but I'm ashamed because I'm related to you and everybody knows. So being able to recognize that education is final. Educate people on these things happen. It's like obesity. It is a sickness. It is an illness that affects the brain. When you inform and when you educate and continue to educate, people don't stigmatize it as much anymore and recognize it to be the same thing as high blood pressure, the same thing as, whatever ailment I can come up with, right? And not relegate individuals who do say, I believe I'm depressed, I'm clinically depressed. Do not really get into the back of the hole and say, something wrong with you, buckle, to get back. Don't say that outside. And I can tell you, I'm coming from an African background. And I remember my friend committed suicide and I was in pain. And my father looked at me and goes, but why would anybody do that? And I said, that is what I think it is. He said, whoever can take their life, God, I said, please. So teaching that, re-educating, talking about that starts from the house, starts from the home. And so I started mine with educating. Do you know that it's a part of the brain that if it's not fed or if it goes awry, can create thoughts in your head that make you feel, no matter how much you try, whether it's the inbuilt of serotonin or the lack of serotonin, that makes you think things that are not there, makes you hallucinate, makes you feel. I told him, think about the mad people on the road, right? Imagine if in the onset of that so-called madness, somebody saw it and looked at it as what exactly it was and started to treat. Maybe we will have that situation.
You're talking about the Lizzo effect. So y'all all know Lizzo. So y'all know Lizzo. Lizzo normalized a real woman's figure.
Right.
Yeah.
Because 90% of the women in the world look like her, right? And so she normalized it and now we can deal with it, talk about it, talk about health in a normal way.
I was going to share also in means of faith. We definitely need to be more realistic in means of faith. Saying, okay, if you're in this state, you didn't pray enough. You don't have enough faith. I mean, get over that depression. I mean, how to be depressed? You need to go read the word. And there's nothing wrong with it. That's a word. And the word is there for, the word is there. But everyday life, I mean, like you said, not making people feel as if they can't voice it and they can't get the help that they need. Because even spiritually, they may feel like, feeling this way, I'm doing a disservice to God. Right? But God knows about what's going on. And God wants you to get help. And you saying, I'm not going to go because I don't want people to say, you don't have enough faith because you're depressed. We have to rework that even in our areas of faith. Because a dead person, what are you going to, after they die? Well, no, listen, like you said, some of the signs are very present. And you'll have even people come to church who are abused. Physically, whatever, mentally, whatever, and we tell them just pray it away. That has nothing to do with the fact that this person is in a situation that needs help.
That's right.
So we, as a community, need to talk to those things as well. One time I was in the church and we were having a meeting with the couples. And I'm like, well, what do we do if a couple comes in and we can tell that there's some signs of physical abuse? Well, we're not gonna touch that. We're not gonna touch that?
No,
We're not gonna get involved because, we can't do that. I said, so you're gonna tell this woman, if you know she's visibly has bruises, you need to keep going home and keep getting beat down because we don't touch it? I said, we're doing a disservice, not just to that person, but a disservice to Christ himself, because we're supposed to be thinking and praying about each other. So even in the means of faith, we need to come forth and be honest about these things so that we can use our faith effectively, not blindly.
And who leads you in this process is real important.
So recently I was hired. This year.
Yeah.
3 years ago, not 4 years ago. So I was hired by a construction company and the owners really believe that everyone needs to go to therapy. So my role now was to normalize coming to see me. Why am I gonna see you? I don't have any problems. I said, okay, then come and vent.
that's
Come and chat with me. And eventually stuff would start coming out and then they would tell my friends and their friends. And before you know it, I was booked. I had a waiting list. So so the beauty of that was that, and this touches on another question, the construction company picked up the tab. So we did not have to go out and look for anyone. They did not have to find a babysitter. They did not have to find that hour. They just came on their lunch hour. That's a beautiful thing. And then, and I was sharing with some of you earlier that I'm also in local school district, and I pitched the idea of providing services for the adults. Because we didn't get anything during COVID. Children always get what they need. And again, why am I going to come see you? Is this confidential? You can vent, you can come and have a conversation with me. Let's problem solve. Maybe you want to go back to school. But that was opening the door for them to start to see. You could do so many different things with therapy. It's not always talking about your emotions or somebody else's.
Yeah, and part of that normalization, right, it is really talking about what is and what is not a mental health issue. You know, because when people think mental health, they go way left. They think it's you know, so they want. What about the person who's just struggling COVID? What about the person who's dealing with loss? What about the person who starts having problems getting out of the bed, right? They don't really know why. You know, are we thinking that's a mental health issue? You know, or is that just a Tuesday? You know, so you have to normalize their ability to pick up the phone and seek help wherever that help needs to be accessed. Whether, and we talk about culture, I mean, culture is our inability to educate people through culture that has us exactly where we are. Because we're not doing it in our communities, we're not doing it in the church, we're not having these conversations in the schools, and we're not having the conversations in our families, because, you know, crazy, you know, what kind of language do we use to describe, you know, team right in the head? What does that mean?
Yeah,
We're gonna take questions there.
and I feel like, you know, even to a like kind of like a larger note, because like as you said, like we certainly aren't doing it in the Black community, but even on like a larger scale, like worldwide, I feel like, you know, across the diaspora, we're almost like programmed to be willing to help each other only when we feel like we're our best selves. And it's like, why is it that, you know, I need to be willing to help when I'm feeling my best, but when I'm at my worst, suddenly my issues are, you know, all to myself. You know, we need to raise one another, educate one another, and raise our children and our neighbors and our friends to know that, like, when you're experiencing issues, like, it's okay to speak about them. It's okay to, you know, feel like, you know, like, damn, I'm out of my luck. Like, what, like, I need to be able to talk about what I need to do with myself or for myself and with myself, so I can kind of map things out. I feel like a lot of people overlook just talking to themselves and like doing like little personal plans. Like the same way like you kind of talk yourself through your budget, like you have to talk yourself through like the things that are in your head as well.
You are leading right to the next line of topics, because let's talk about these cultural factors that go into it. And I'm not just talking about, oh, this is Black culture, there's an American culture.
Yeah.
There is, there are global culture that I see with people that will slow them down or even stop them, period. From even talking or trying to access help, particularly with our men. Y'all are just supposed to be the stronger, you don't cry, just do it. And if in the dynamics of what we've been taught of men leading, how you got your leader broke down, how can the leader really lead? So what are these cultural dynamics that we're running up against? And I'm so glad we got diverse cultures and ethnicities in here, so talk about it.
I was gonna say, even with my grandson, he's 7, he's biracial, his dad's white, and of course is Black. But I always told her, let that boy cry. Because I mean, that's the first thing that he felt, well, he can't go ahead and cry. Let that boy know how to exert his feelings. I said, you're doing him a disservice, telling him to ingest the pain and hide the pain. Don't dare cry. That's a disservice to him. So one day when he's older and going through something, and instead of getting it out and seeking help and understanding there's something wrong, he gonna try to hide that pain. He can find it in it can come out in eating, drug abuse, it can come out in battery, it can come out in all these unhealthy means. And even some help, it can become there's some people workaholics. That's not healthy. That's positive, some people may think.
Like what do you mean?
Working is great, but if he becomes a workaholic and doesn't know how to have self-care and sit down, it's not gonna do him any good. So I feel like even with our young boys, let them understand what pain, if they get hurt, let them cry it out, come to mom and get a hug and a Band-Aid and go on and be happy. There's nothing wrong with that. But like I said, that has to come out when they're young. So we have to do that as the young boys come up, so we can let them grow into that and knowing that that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And even like, in kind of, from the perspective of like having been that young Black boy that like grew up to kind of have his own mental health issues, I had to have a very adult conversation with my parents that, sometimes parents as well have to realize that you may think you're doing your best, but your best isn't the best for this situation. And I think there needs to be a level of transparency when it comes to the fact that, even as parents, I'm sure every parent, when their child bruises themselves or scrapes themselves, oh, you're okay, like everything's okay. Like, of course you want to console them, but I think there also needs to be a level of recognition that for a child that's confusing. Because from a child's perspective, I'm sitting here, there's blood coming out of me, I barely recognize what this is, I feel pain, something's wrong, and you, my guidance person, are sitting here telling me, it's okay, you're fine, everything's okay, we're just gonna fix you up. And it's like, you go through your whole life thinking, oh, I just need to fix it up, I just need to fix it up. But it's like, are you fixing what needs to be fixed in the way that it needs to be fixed? Because a Band-Aid doesn't fix a gunshot wound.
No, Jesus, yeah.
Sometimes, as an adult, sometimes those little cuts grow to feel that way.
Yeah.
Like what feels like a little wound when you're young grows to be like, an entire wound. And it makes a difference in understanding when you're young, it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to admit that you're not okay. It's more about what you're gonna do with that afterwards, how you're gonna fix yourself and know how not to let that happen again. That's the conversation we're not having.
And I would offer that we're not having that conversation because the experience of young Black boys is characterized by trauma and violence. because the people around us don't know what to do on trauma.
Right.
Or we can't protect us from violence. They can't help heal us.
Yeah.
So how they gonna teach us how to heal ourselves?
Right.
So we fall into this pattern of toxic masculinity. It's cemented and rooted in policies, barriers, all like behavior. And it's not until we become an adult that we realize that all the ways that we thought about the world and coping and dealing, it was wrong.
Yeah. And how is it you have to spend time rebuilding that, yeah.
Well, you know, what you're pointing out now, we're in a pivotal time, not just black and brown people. This world is in a pivotal time, right? That's why it's the book banning and insurrections and all that, because people don't even understand, they're all traumatized. You mean my daddy killed your great grandmama? Like there are things that young people are internalizing about their families. The truth is coming out. We're in a internet stage, you could find out information, and people are starting to realize what was created may not have been created on the best level. Like somebody suffered for this, and now we gotta look at these people, we gotta look at the results of that trauma that happened years ago from the 1600s. We're looking at that now, and people are dealing with it. So not only do we have to treat ourselves, and you're right, there's a void with, so who's gonna deal with that? Quick, short story. A young girl, young professional girl, you know, was very down, and I know she was under care. So I used to tell her the look, right? Which was a lot of crusting around the mouth and stuff, something's not right. I was like, so what medicine? And she was going to a doctor that just issued medicine. That's all, right? He was sedated, but they didn't want to deal with her trauma. She didn't, the professional didn't know how to deal with her trauma. I asked her the race and culture, the professional, and when she told me, I said, I think, you know, you should be talking to your parents a little bit more, because that may not be the therapist for you, because you're being sedated and you're not dealing with your issue. She did end up getting a referral through us for another therapist. And it wasn't a black therapist, it was just another therapist that was willing to treat her without the heavy sedation. Totally different person. That's what a couple months later she's talking, and so we've got to recognize that some of it is the culture of even a practitioner. That's right. Because talk about that part. What were y'all trained to do that you feel we need to reevaluate in terms of the culture of therapy?
Well,
Ooh,
I would say up until, I want to say about maybe 10, 15 years ago, they started introducing cultural competency even into medical school. It wasn't there before. So it was almost legalization of one glove fits all, right? And so a person who comes in, and this is also a misdiagnosis with African American men, who come in with mood disorders, gets diagnosed with schizophrenia, and gets treated for that, and continues to stick to the line of what you were talking about, is the cultural competency. I'm talking to you about the situation, but you're seeing something entirely different, because that situation, you're not matching it with my PTSD, with the fact that I'm a veteran, with the fact that I've seen different things, with the fact that I was born in an era that maybe nobody talks to me. But there were so many factors that they don't dig into through therapy. And so they go to med zone, right? And so by the time you're not listening to me, I'm accepting the med that you're giving to me because you don't care anyway. So, and then fear, you know, what do they call it? White coat syndrome? The doctor is always right. And so that limits us from asking questions. What is your background? Listen, I'm guilty of it. You know, I have physicians in my family. And so by the time I get into the doctor's office, all the questions I have leave my brain. Right? And then I see the doctor, and the doctor tells me things, and I'm like, yeah, right. I need to have surgery, correct? Okay,
Right.
yeah. And then I go, I speak down my sister. She said, I need surgery for what? You know, and then she goes, what did you do when you went in there? And I'm like, well, I didn't say anything. Okay, why are you calling me? And education starts from home. And then she goes, okay, pause. Don't go in there and then be an idiot. You are educated, you have all the questions. Why are you afraid? Because I feel like they know what they're doing. But do they?
And if we're talking about practitioners and providers, they don't know what they're doing.
No.
Thank you.
Right?
Oh, no.
They don't know what they're doing. Because we have accrediting bodies and regulatory bodies that oversee all of these schools. So while they have competencies which outline cultural competence, diversity, anti-racism, equity, power, privilege, oppression, but there's no conversation about how to actualize that. What does this thing here look like in practice for you as an educator to these students? What does this look like when you have interns at C&G? How do you pay attention to cultural competence? What questions do you ask someone? You know what I'm saying? So you can maybe get at a differential or a different diagnosis, right? Schools are not preparing their students for that conversation. So students, they graduate, they become practitioners who are not culturally competent. Then they wind up supervising other students at some later point in their career, and they're doing their students the same disservice that they've done to them. So as we're looking at this, there is an organizational context that we also have to consider. This is just not someone getting questions when they go to the doctor, right? This is how have these systems been designed to support cultural competence with an appreciation for diversity and a focus on anti-racism.
Absolutely.
Okay, Dr. Becker.
So they haven't, we've all been, our training is the same, regardless of what we look like, where we came from. Our learning and our education happens after we leave school.
That's right.
So some of us here have private practices, we weren't taught how to run a private practice, we weren't taught about the business.
No.
So that's knowledge that we have to pick up on our own. And as we said, the competency was not in my school. But now, and embrace it, because I need to learn a lot about, you know, this person is different from this person, even if they look alike, they come from the same place. Yeah.
I just wanted to even share in regards to, I'm a part of Birth Justice Warriors. We were discussing about even women who are pregnant or even having their children. Even the ignorance dealing with our culture with that. If we say we're in pain, what does that look like? You didn't hear that. Like when my daughter was in labor with my grandson, her water broke. She knew her water broke. She went to the doctor. She was in an accident earlier that day. They were trying to send her home and told her her water didn't work. My daughter went on Google and said, how do I, what is it? So it said to pull her legs together to make it. So then she rang the nurse and they said, oh, your water broke. But they were ready to send her home and she was in active labor. So even as African-American women, we're dealing with our reproductive health and body. If we say something doesn't feel right, you know, we're having large excessive bleeding in our menstrual, you know, things of, so we feel this lump. And it's, oh, well, I mean, it's all in your head. I mean, you can't possibly, we're ignored even in that sense, because it's as if we don't know pain. Like, what does pain look like for even us? If we need pain medication, do you really need that pain medication? But if the next person comes in, and you're like, you know, they might be like, well, they're okay, they need pain meds, but you have to. So even with that about our bodies, knowing what pain looks like for us, it's questionable, because we can't possibly know what that feel like for ourselves. So even as an African-American woman, for walking those steps, that trauma, like I said, I went through a horrific experience when I had my daughter. I was 15, I had her in Syosset Hospital. And at that time it was 99% white.
Right.
And I had nurses and doctors come in and tell me, at one point told my mother, she shouldn't even be in here at this age. It was like in the ignorance of them not even wanting to touch me. After I had my daughter, I developed a fever. I almost lost my uterus. And they were still like, didn't want to, I was wetting myself, so I never had a C-section, didn't know anything about this. They didn't want to change me, they didn't want to touch me. I was in a room by myself, and then my daughter was in bed for 2 days because she had milk allergy. They didn't pick up on that. My mom picked up on that when she didn't feed her. So now here I am in my head going to a gynecologist a lot of times that white coat syndrome is real. They start saying things to you, you're like, well, maybe I don't know about my body, maybe I don't know I'm in pain, maybe I don't know why I'm bleeding. You know, you're questioning all of this, even though it's just your body. So even as an African American woman with my daughters, you know, I try to give them empowerment, but it seemed like I had her in 1991, she had my grandson in 2015, but almost a similar situation. And she was in the service, she was a Navy woman. And still, it was almost as if she came in with her husband. Now, this is the difference. I was a teen mom. She came in with her husband, and she was still treated as a, what are you doing?
You know, some of the current news stories with Beyonce, Serena Williams, and you know, it makes it a point that, and it doesn't matter whose money.
Oh, no.
But these women talk about they want to brink of death before the doctors realized they were telling the truth. So how do we advocate for our community? And then I'm gonna say some time, because I don't know if you've got questions, but how do we advocate for people in our community? What are some of the suggestions you have for all of us? What should we be doing?
One thing I always tell like a lot of my friends and colleagues and things like that is that, you know, we need to recognize that the same way, you know, like I or anyone here would, you know, go to college, learn the material and, you know, try to memorize, the same way we have to go through the process of learning, so do doctors, so do other professionals, and they are liable the same way, you know, sometimes we don't read a sentence in an email, you know, sometimes we miss over a subject, you know, sometimes things get missed. And there needs to be like a general understanding that, especially on the side of the professionals, to understand that while I was trained, while I do have a degree and all the, you know, validations in the world, I can still be wrong. And I think that's something that, like, for me as a professional, I had to learn being in the field. You know, I was familiar with all of the national accrediting agencies and all the cultural competencies, but it wasn't until the first time that I almost caught myself saying, oh, you're fine, you don't worry. I heard myself saying that in a session, I was like, why am I telling this person that, like, I'm wrong, like, I know I'm wrong in saying this. I was like, but it's that lack of awareness once you become that professional that I feel like a lot of people have, and that, like, the same way I can be wrong in my personal life, I can be wrong professionally. And that's why there needs to be a conversation, not just with yourself as a professional and your colleagues, but in understanding, you know, the client and what they're truly experiencing. I've seen so many people get diagnosed with, you know, like you said, schizophrenia, bipolar, and all these things, and it's like, was time frame considered? You know, like, you came with all these presenting options. I could present manic today and then for the next 3 months be totally fine. You have to, you know, there's other aspects that I feel like a lot of professionals skip over, overlook, or they'll just kind of take the client for their word, but there needs to be a deeper understanding of what is valid and what is false.
Are you overwhelmed? Is your condition totally overwhelmed? So that goes to why people are kind of, you know, cycling through things, and the unfortunate part is that these are lives we're dreaming of, somebody is falling through the cracks.
Absolutely. So yes, we're all overwhelmed because there's so much need in the community, and it just isn't in treatment, right? But it's also in the education, it's also in the advocacy, because we have to teach our communities everything from A to Z about mental health. Not only what it is, what it isn't, how does it manifest, what does it look like, what is, you know, real, you know, what is not, what is situational. You know, for what services do you see a psychologist versus a clinical social worker? You know, and I come from an era where we have block parties, and if we can have community celebrations, then we can have community events talking about mental health. So why are we pushing that?
Right.
Exactly. Right. The barbershop is the staple, but, you know, but in the same way that we privilege fun in our communities and all these other ways of coping, we also need to privilege education, right, in the same way. So that's exhausting, trying to fill those needs.
I think we need to also learn how to just get away from the secrets. Sadly, part of the African American existence and culture is secrets. We're just gonna throw this under the rug. We're never, ever, ever gonna talk about it. You never, ever talk about it. You bring it up, don't tell nobody. So now the next thing you know, you grow up, you got this trauma. Next thing you know, you're responding to the trauma, you never dealt with the trauma, then it's a whole it's just passing on to the next, to the next, to the next.
And then you're the bad guy for bringing it
I'm
up.
bringing it up, so
Yeah.
you
Crazy auntie that.
Exactly, yeah.
or if you try to bring your truth up and confront the problem, you're still wrong. Because you want to get validation on what happened to you to understand it. So even with you trying to understand it, you're the bad guy. So here you are like trying to get help and you wanna know, well, we're not talking about that. That didn't happen to you, it could have happened to you, like, you know. So I think the point is breaking down some, we gotta get rid of these secrets. Because they're not saving anything. They're actually killing us. So I think to have that conversation at the block party, and I think a lot of people do that because they don't wanna, quote unquote, be seen as the family that's nuts. But in honesty, everybody got somebody crazy in family, so it just take a number.
A family member of mine recently told me that had known, had she seen a therapist or gotten treatment earlier, and we're talking about over 20 years ago, that her life would have been totally different. And it's because of her lack of willingness to share that she was going through all of these, she was overseas and not sharing all of the things that she was experiencing, the family secrets, all mental illness in the family. Now we're learning so much, but it's
But you know, and I'll play the devil's advocate, because it's not just the Black community.
No.
You know, and I've seen similar things, but what I think is happening now is because of technology and because of the internet. And when I look at some posts, I got 2,000 friends. Don't ask me, I don't even know. 2,000 friends, and I'm looking at posts. So, are they reading this before they put this up? Like, do you realize what you're saying? And they think this is a normal conversation. How would we help? Sometimes I'll be like, don't respond. How do we help? Like, this is critical.
Well, in terms of advocacy, I think we need to be our own advocate. Right? Activism, the same way we are active for other causes, we need to be active for Black lives in mental health. We need to constantly write to the people we put in power to put this on their docket. It needs to continue, we need to be on it. And I feel that that's where we're lacking. The little things like review. Okay, I go to the supermarket, right? And I've worked in CVS in the past, and I looked at somebody maybe wrong, I talked to them firmly, and I get a report the next morning. White people always willing to report. They'll report you didn't look right, they'll report you didn't dress right. You know who doesn't report anything? We do not. We don't. I'm guilty. You know, we go into the parking lot, you're angry when I'm leaving the store, I don't want to report you to your manager. You get into the parking lot, you know what, I'm gonna do something else with my time. So basically, when we speak to, I went to a therapist that really didn't take the time to do what they need to do with me, and I reported it. We need to start looking at the negative. Because that's a teachable moment for that therapist. Maybe that therapist manager can say, you need cultural competency training. You know, that can help us. We have to advocate for us. We have to advocate for people that look like us. If I'm going to hold up that picket for everything under the sun, I need to hold up that picket for something that involves somebody that looks like me, or something that feeds and helps and aids my community. And that's the only way we can put this in the forefront. We need to write, they write, people write, they write to everything. They write to the people they put in power. They write, I have a woman that writes a letter every single day. I might write one every 3 months. And then we wonder why our communities do not have the things that we need.
But we'll post on Facebook. We'll post on Facebook in a minute, but we won't write the letter to the people that.
And we don't go out to vote. We do not know. No, in office, we do not know they have constituents, we are the constituents, right? But we don't know what this person who we're putting into office, what their thoughts about Black mental health in Hempstead, in Freeport, in Roseville, that is flooded with people who look like me. And we're putting the person-
they're moved into your neighborhoods intentionally.
That's right.
I have to tell you, over the last, I've been in the same community for 30 years, and I have seen these houses pop up. And all of a sudden, I'm like, who are people walking down the block, going to the store, because they don't drive. But they'll walk to the gas station, they walk around, and it's intentional in our community. But go ahead,
I was gonna also say that even with people of color who become in these positions of social work and therapists, knowing how to help each other. My daughters in a very domestic situation. My grandson's therapist was African American. Because of the fact that her husband was hitting her in the sun, she told my daughter she was unfit. She was what? Unfit, because she's in the marriage. Told her to leave the marriage. She called CPS on my daughter and snowballed into a whole situation. Of course, now put more danger on my grandson and my daughter. When she leaves the marriage, well, he's not there. When CPS wanted, she didn't want to get involved anymore. She didn't want to talk to CPS. She didn't want, but she started this whole snowball. And as the situation is getting worse and worse, you know, my daughter is a veteran. My daughter has PTSD from service. My daughter has, I mean, she's doing great things. She's in college stuff, but my daughter developed ulcer from the situation, going back and forth to court. My grandson is constantly, his mental health is being struggled because he has to sit with this guy he comes to Zoom and every Sunday for 4 hours. And it's an ongoing trauma for him because this guy's, I was whacked out mine. But the person who started all this was an African American therapist. And the judge is African American. She was making it worse. You know, like all of these people who are in these positions that they're in the room. I'm not saying you're supposed to sit down and kowtow and just because they're Black, I'm just gonna give them a pass. Yeah. But when you're in this position, you have an obligation. I honestly feel like, as an advocate for the community, I have an obligation for whatever knowledge I've invested in to use to help the people in my realm. So I'm not supposed to get in these positions and feel like, well, I don't have to care no more because you know I made it. No, you have been blessed enough that someone opened the door for you. So now you have to take that knowledge. How can you make this better? Instead of calling CPS, why don't you sit with my daughter and find some other ways realistically how to help her? This is the middle of COVID. So there was nothing open. It was supposed to go. But her attitude was, if you stay in this marriage, you're unfit and you're putting on, it was supposed to go. So people who look like us, we have to remember how to take these positions and use them for the betterment of our own people.
Well, you know that saying, sometimes the folks.
Those skin folk ain't
Like
it?
us.
Skin folk ain't
Right.
it?
So let's talk about a whole nother topic, which is resources. You know, I really want to get to the resources, not only resources for you all to manage a practice, that's a whole nother topic, but resources for people to be able to access you. So let's talk about both of those.
So, what I want to give you some numbers too.
You can't with the numbers.
Oh, okay. So only 6.2% were psychologists, 5.6% of advanced practice psychiatric nursing, 12.6% of social workers, and 21.3% of psychiatrists are members of minority groups.
That's small.
That's it with you for a second. I scoured the internet based on the assignments that was given. So fine, and I was very impressed with what I found. There are resources out there that help help people of Black and brown faith. One of them is the Black Emotional and Mental Health Collective, right? The group is removing barriers for Black people experiences getting access to and staying connected to emotional health care. But one of the major things they do, they provide training and education. You can call them for that. They also provide advocacy and creative opportunity. Then there's Black Men Here. limited and selected service for those Black men who require free, or, what do you call it? Free-ish.
Yeah. Yeah.
That way from you.
Yeah.
Subsidized care, they provide free mental health services for Black men. They have,
You're gonna send that to us.
just ourselves Black. Provides information on promoting mental health and developing positive coping mechanisms through podcasts, online magazine, and online discussion groups. Sister Alpha, organization that provides mental health wellness, education, and resource connection in communities to support Black women. Therapy for Black girls, online space dedicated to encouraging the mental wellness of Black women and Black girls. Offers listing of medical professionals. So some of these websites you go in and they provide you with mental health professionals who look like you and who have cultural competency and who have been graded, right? Seaway Project, a nonprofit dedicated to promoting mental health awareness throughout the global community. Steve Fund organization focused on supporting the mental health and emotional well-being of young people of color. And unapologetically us. And this was just a few of the things that came up. There were more. Online.
Get it, hey.
Yeah, online community of African American women. And one of this, I think it was Pew Black Men. What they do is they train Black men to be the help that other Black men need. See, I have a program. I have a foundation that I created, and I go out into the streets. And this is for prostate cancer, which affects our Black men exponentially, right? But I go out on the streets and I meet brothers in the street. And I'm talking about prostate cancer, don't got me, right? And so when I meet them, the first thing I say to them is, if you talk to another man, they'll listen to you quicker than they listen to
Right.
you. I said, so please spread the word. And I find a lot of them, I give them their props. I said, you can do a better job than I'm doing. I said, so I'm gonna talk to you. Now, most of our Black brothers, they see you on the street, they're like, hey, what's up? Stop using.
Right.
How are you? Now, this could be the same thing. Hey, if you deal with your mental health, then you can talk another brother into looking at it. There's a quote here that says, I am no less a man because I fear. I am no less a man because of mental health struggles. I am no less a man because only I get to decide what it means for me to be a man.
That's a king of sound.
So,
Okay,
it's all you guys will send them
read for
to you,
Read.
but they are there. They
Thank
are
you. And we're gonna post these after the meeting is over. Okay.
So if you look on chairs around you, then should be on your chair as well. The new Hope Counseling. Mental health counseling is located in Valley Stream Rockville Center. The Rockville Center branch is a walk-in crisis center. No appointment necessary. They're right down the street from Mercy Hospital in Rockville Center. They're connected with them. So anyone can walk there, anyone can go in for services. They will triage you, make sure that they are doing the right thing. If not, they will refer you out for an appropriate service. This is, I'm chairwoman of the board of the Speak Hope Foundation, and our goal is to raise $100,000 for subsidizing mental health premiums, picking up the entire tab. And that was born out of the wisdom of the two men down here, Clinton Clovis and Don Singfield. And they're the ones who created the foundation, and they saw that as COVID made more of an impact, the phones were not ringing. And then all of a sudden, ballistic. And then people were not coming because we had to pay the car note, and I lost my job. That's if I'm not going to therapy. That's if I can hold off for another day or another week. So. Yes. So please take the extras on your chair, share them with your friends. They can also do telephone services. That was very.
I also do, I need to plug in my companies. CNG, we do have programs. One of the programs which I direct over there provides, and it's free, provides, anyone in crisis, acute crisis, help if they need. We also have a respite. So if you are in crisis and you need somewhere to rest for 30 days, we do provide that, in a 3-bed, single bed, home, where you are going to, have behavioral specialists talk to you, work with you, and even if you are a working person, you can go to work from there. If you just need that respite, you know, you're home or you live in a community and you know what, something is triggering you here. And then we find a way to allow you and help you cope, provide you with therapists who are hired by you, who can provide you what you need, for the services that you need. And when we cannot fit you into whatever it is, we do link up with some of the community-based clinics or community-based therapists around your area to follow up with you, or if your situation is chronic versus just that acute, there is also a follow through. And we don't just drop you after we've seen you, we also follow through month after month. And we are peer driven. One of my peers back there, say hello. Organization, and we have found it to be effective, especially for most of our clients who do have substance abuse disorders and who have co-occurring disorders, so some mental health and some substance abuse, to utilize the help of peers to get back on their feet. There's so many things as LMSWs and all the other Ws, you know, that they can do, right? But we believe that just the peer speaking to or working together with a social worker or mental health counselor can help promote that person's health. So wherever there, you can have our cards, and we have a lot of our flyers ready for all the programs that we do.
I wanna save some time for the audience, because I know y'all have some questions. So you get your hand raised, the first person. You remember what your question was?
I actually had a statement and a question. So a few years ago, I was going to Suffolk Community College. And I was dealing with, so there was a time in March was a bad month for my family. She remembers. Because I had lost my first wife, so I was depressed, grieving, in almost like 14 years, you know. And then one day it hit me, and I'm at school and I'm having problems with my work now. And you know, I was a student that special needs. So that starts affecting me in the mental as well. And I had a breakdown. So I went to, at first I was like, I'm not crazy. And she would say, you need help. Or she would say, you know, the red flags were there. All right, because my house became like walking on eggshells. With my tempers, my being locked in the room, away from everybody, not socializing with my kids and my wife. So it wasn't until I went and seen the therapist at school where I was able to, I didn't feel like it was ammunition that people would use towards me, but if I shared in there, I was able to get it out. And it was like a load came off. So I'm here to say mental health, especially for men, you know, we look at it as this, oh, we know that it is something like you're weak or something. And that's what my perception was. I'm not crazy. I'm not, that was gonna make me look weak. But in the essence, it really helped me out, you know, to get away from not isolating from my children, my wife, and locking myself in a room, or even the with the anger issues and bursting out. And not to say I don't get angry now, but it was a big difference back then and now. So
to add to that, also compound that, our son was diagnosed with autism. So we were going through that, the morning we put him into special ed. So that, of course, invoked, once again, the fear, the stigma. And sadly, all those 14 years, all of our birthdays are in March.
yes.
So every birthday month, it was like, you couldn't celebrate properly because he's in this zone. His birthday's in March. And still,
Our whole house is.
and it was hell for the 14 years. And the sad part is the children now, he's like trying to do makeup work because all that trauma,
Yeah.
they still associate with that because, you know, and yeah, they understood he had issues, but as a child, you don't care about that. It's my birthday. So even trying to get him to deal with my son, who's now walking in this famous special ed, he's like, oh my God, he's gonna be like, no, we're gonna fight you. So that also isolated him more even away from our son. So
I
he
didn't want
was,
to accept that my son had the same, like, was having special ed needs and all that I had to go through. I know from going through special ed, I knew about the getting bullied, all these things happening and those things going for petty stuff. And living in Amityville, so.
well, you didn't mention that.
I'm just telling you, I don't have that.
Let me tell you something. 90% of Black and brown children on Long Island are considered special needs. I had new immigrant students coming into school, and because they were not English proficient, they
Mhm,
put
That's
them in
the first,
special ed.
that's the first.
And so, you know, this whole thing about who's special ed, my son used to drop his city, and they say, oh, special ed. You know, like, it doesn't matter, drawn outside the line, oh, special ed. So it's a trigger.
Yeah.
We have to learn how to teach parents to accept the category if they have to.
Yes.
If they have not, you know, the first person you go to, your pediatrician. My pediatrician wrote letters to the school. I would go in those meetings with all the psychologists and everything, so it's from his pediatrician. With a medical doctor, there's nothing wrong with the boy.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? He's spoiled that, but there's nothing else wrong with him. That's what his diagnosis was, spoiled. I knew that, sorry.
That's very good.
And even when our son, when we would go to, like, he had neurologists say things about him and everything, we had documentation. And we would go to the school and they're thinking, well, they're not educators, they're doctors.
I've had 2 CPS cases because of the lack of what the school supports and it carrying over and having to pull them out.
Trying to get him
And
services.
I was deemed a child abuser twice. So I said, you know, even in our culture, I didn't even touch on that, but weaponizing even those neurodiverse conditions against our children. Like you said, because they don't speak the language, you must be special needs. You know, instead of saying maybe they don't speak the language, you know, or having other health conditions, oh, well, they just can't possibly learn.
Our next panel,
So,
we're gonna have you in the education panel, because we have a whole series of, we need to talk to parents on how to deal with that issue in school, but let me give one question for nobody, but they got something.
Okay.
Just quickly, in that panel,
Yes.
I hope to talk about how some of our professions are weaponized against the Black community.
that's right.
We'll put you on the parents.
Hey, let's note.
We have another.
Question I have is, I have 2 young daughters and the school makes sure twice a year they go to the dentist. Twice a year, make sure they get their vaccines. So why can't we have it where they just go and get mental checkups twice a year? Because my daughters, they started therapy at 5. Because I recognized that they were going through trauma, but I know they didn't have the words for the trauma. So I figured if I was hurting because of the trauma, they must be hurting. Because they didn't have the experience, they're like happy-go-lucky.
Yes.
But I wanted, I'm writing a book, but it's called Dealing with Child Traumas in Real Time.
I like that.
The reason I'm writing this book is I think a lot of parents need to understand, just like we went to the emergency room for a broken leg, the book says you have to run to seek therapy for a broken heart. A lot of us don't do the broken heart part. We will run the broken leg, can't hear, have a fever, like all the physical things. So like the book is basically trying to make people understand like the brain is also an organ. Just like they want you to go to get your heart checked, your teeth checked, your ears checked. But you notice like when it comes to the brain, that's the thing that controls everything in our body. they say it doesn't need to get checked, but the brain is actually the engine.
That's right.
To the whole body. So imagine not getting, well, oil changes.
That's
every
right.
3 months.
For your car
So
engine.
you're moving, and you're like, oh, you don't need to get a check. You know, because the reason that your heart works is because your brain. If the brain doesn't work, then nothing else in your body works. So I'm trying to advocate. When you talk about advocacy, I had a meeting with one of our Congress people, his name is Andrew Gardino. And I'm trying to advocate in DC to put in every child's requirement check is to get 2 mental health checks a year.
I like that.
And have it signed off in school, because the school will be like, oh, they didn't go to the dentist. It'd be like your parents need to sign to show that you actually went to them. So all of these things matter, but they don't check the brain. They don't check to make sure everything is okay.
They only check when you have an ACS case.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, because you know why? Like my kids could be
It has to
having
be
a
bad, that's what they do. Right.
yeah, but I think that we need to re-educate
Mhm.
about the brain.
We have to normalize.
Yeah.
We have to normalize mental
Yeah,
health.
we're not, everyone uses the word crazy, but you have to see the brain like you see the heart. You have to see the brain like you see the lungs. It's like, even in church, like they'll say, you know, God's gonna help you, but you still go to your cardiologist to make sure you get your high blood pressure medicine. You still go to your doctor for everything else. If that was the case, then you would just sit home and let God help you, right?
And so they'll be like that
Right,
too.
right.
Yeah, but then if it's your brain, people have to understand that your brain is also an organ. I think when you think of mental health, they think of it as an abstract
That's
thing.
right.
Yeah.
So therefore, because
Because there's
it's not
no association
Mhm.
with what is causing that.
Right.
So we're not associating mental health with brain. A lot of times we're associated with the heart.
Yeah.
You know, diabetes you associate with
your insulin, your
That's right.
pancreas.
But
So
we
your
we have
brain is
to re-educate.
associated with your brain, so I think they have to re-educate that the brain is an organ.
Yeah.
People are forgetting that the brain is actually like a functioning organ, because everything else is tangible, but your brain is tangible too.
And that's important to education, what they really need to know. If that child is not healthy here, they can't
They
possibly
can't do
learn.
anything else.
They can't possibly learn,
Yeah.
well, this kid's being bad.
Yeah.
They're
And
not
like even,
My thing is like, even like the Black boys in our community, they're all broken, they all have
Yes.
this trauma.
Yes.
yeah,
That's how they could go to someone, not making excuses and shoot them in the head. They don't even know what they're doing. So, but it's something trauma in them that's like triggering them to do it, but they don't even have the words, they don't know why they feel this way. Like, your emotions are not dealt with. That's why, like, with my kids, that's why I put them in therapy at 5, because, and they're still in therapy and they're going on 10. They're like, every week, like, why are we doing this? I'm like, we're doing this because I don't want them to rebel.
Yes.
And see, I'm doing this because I'm helping you unfold your emotional baggage in real time.
Yes.
Or just teaching them how to cope.
yeah,
Yeah, and teaching them that early, this is why I want this to start in early education, that this is a safe place, like you just said, where you could talk about your feelings and not feeling like someone else is gonna find out about it, unless you're going to harm yourself, of course, that's when you tell parents. But you don't have to sometimes go to your friends, because sometimes your friend might not be your friend tomorrow.
And they don't have the technique.
And they're not knowledgeable.
That's right.
You know, they're gonna give you advice based on their trauma.
right.
Yeah.
You know,
And I think that-
There's a book out, there was a whole study about, child soldiers.
Yeah.
And they studied it because a lot of those children were actually purchased through grants and foundations out of those military centers. And these are 6, 7-year-old kids who are carrying rifles the
Yeah.
size of their bodies.
Yes.
Who are murdering and killing, and by the time they got rescued and brought for therapy, one of the kids, and I can't remember the name of the book, but he ended up going to Columbia Law School, and his book is about dealing with the trauma and how when he was first rescued, he escaped before he get to the US and ran back to the soldier. Cause he thought that was so you were so 100% right, but I want to talk about the advocacy, because you gotta talk to Marvin about the
Yeah.
policy Because this is the stuff, so what's the action we can support you in? We can support with that kind of legislation with Gabarino. That's what we're supposed to do, so I love that part. Let me just make sure other questions, go ahead, Marvin.
Yeah, I actually have one. Somebody said something earlier in this conversation that like it actually happened to me the other day. So I kind of wanted to get your opinions on how to, as a Black father, how to better approach situations like that, right? I believe it was you who said that you know, when they fall and they get hurt, you know, we're not supposed to say, no, you'll be all right, you'll be good. Like I was like, just the other day, my son fell and I'm like, nah, you're right, kind of get up, just kind of, I didn't think about it at the moment, but looking at it now, kind of just hearing you speak, is that the proper way to approach that kind of situation? Or are there other ways to approach a situation like that?
I have a boy as well. And well, and he's 7 going on 4. And so, and I come from a predominantly African family where the same stigma follows, where you're a man. You know, if you're bleeding, gunshot will just cover it and stand up and move, my friend. And I moved away from that because, like you, I also have my child, right? And so when I had a child, a boy, as a single Black woman, raising a Black boy in America, man, that's torture for me daily. And so I was gonna speak to that, but then we moved along. But speaking to what he did say, when my child was younger, my child cried, and my father, God bless his soul, said to him, "You're a man, don't cry." And I stopped him right. That's right. And I said to him, "Daddy, don't tell my child not to cry." That's right. I said, "What you know is wrong." He is a human. He has feelings. And so he should exercise utilizing that feeling. Because that's when we come up with what we call it toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
When those boys, you know how we say bad boys, men, unfeeling boys become unfeeling men.
And then we expect them to have feelings.
Sick Black men who never thought how to express feelings. And so they do things, right? And then we give them leverage for that. Right? They cheat constantly. That is what they know. Because another Black man said, it's okay. And then when they go to the barber shop, they're like, "Man, how many women do you have?" This is unfair. And so my task for myself daily is to make sure he recognizes that his feelings are valid, right? Just a few days ago, he screamed to me, man, I thought that scream was really loud. And, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, he saw the blood. And he kept us, and my first instinct was to be like, all this screaming for one scream. But I let him be. When I was walking with another man who were in the park, who has a son, and I watched him constantly tell his son, "Hey man, buck up. And I just met. I didn't know how to approach him. But as we became friends, I told him, I said, "That thing you're doing is wrong. Don't tell me to buck up." He has feelings. You know, and I see the difference with my child and him. He's constantly angry.
Yeah, the only feelings you're allowed to express as a man is anger.
Yes.
That's why.
Because that's all you have the time to get out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's okay. It's okay.
Of our system, wait. This is a capitalist system. It is okay and designed for a system that will incarcerate you for being angry, for whatever the reason is. So there's a monetary motive behind that. Let's get you man enough when you're a kid, because the trigger started 4 years old.
That's right.
So the trigger started 4 because they're building prison system based on who can't read by 4th and 5th and 6th grade. So they already know, okay, you're on track for prison. That's money. And that's why prisons went from being state and federally funded and then private. So we have to, you know, this whole thing is building a whole ecosystem around some thought patterns. And that's why these conversations are important. I really appreciate y'all coming out, because I know you worked all day tired. I didn't even know this was face to face, a big room.
One thing about something that you just said, one of my daughters, didn't know how to read to second grade, right? The school kept saying to her, oh, she don't know how to read, she don't know how to read, so we're just passing her along. And I was like, what do you mean? But I realized they pass them along. So my cousin is a principal, so they didn't know I was like an educated person. But my cousin was like, no, you have to go in there, you have to get an advocate.
Yes.
And you have something to do Wilson's, because she'll learn in Wilson. So this child didn't know how to read, 7 years old. They didn't want to listen to me, so no offense, anyone, I'm gonna get a Jewish advocate, put it in front of them.
Wow.
And now all of a sudden, the 12 Caucasian white women in the panel couldn't talk back to her.
Wow.
They first blamed it on me and
Wow.
said, well, the mom is not doing the homework with her. So that's why she don't know how to read. And she had to say, the mom is not a certified teacher. It's up to you to teach her. She only supports clothes, food, and get her on the bus. So for you to keep putting on a report, the mom is not doing the homework, that's what she doesn't know how to read. She had to say to them, that's not her responsibility. She go to school to teach. She's a parent. She's not a certified teacher. That's number one. Number two, when they introduced the advocacy, when she told them to be a Wilson, she learned how to read in 3 months.
Wow.
I got one to speak to what you're talking about. A couple of months, right before COVID, a year before, there was a student in the district, he was 7, they were trying to expel him. He had a 504 that stated he had all these different things for his mental, whatever capacities. And he went to third grade this one day, told him that the mother went and put clothes in the washing machine. So he called CPS on him, the therapist at the school. Now, they set up this meeting, she has on Friday, if you don't come on Monday to this meeting, we're expelling your son. Thank God that her grandmother knew someone that knew me. She said, this is your district, I need you to meet with her over the weekend. Fine. So I'm going through work all weekend, going to paperwork, we come in on Monday. We're gonna counseling this lady like sharks. She was like 8 people in this room. She was 27 years old with a little baby and a school board at 7. And when I started saying, found out they were changing his 504 without her. 2 or 3 meetings. He was in school suspension several times. She never knew. He was suspended a week and a half and no tutoring. And then I said, and now you want him to go to the therapist that's called CPS on him, you want him to keep going and talk to him? So as we're going, how the whole situation unfolded in this classroom, how it resulted in him so-called hurting his teacher. He supposed to pushed her and hurt her so bad that she's limping now when he's working his top. This little boy, this big. And she was milking it too, walked in, limping and everything. So as I started sharing with them, you know, you violated this mother's rights on such a level. I said, not just her rights, but his rights. And I said, and we're recording this meeting. Well, you can't record this meeting. I said, why can't I? Legally, I have to just let you know I'm recording this meeting. Now, if you choose to record, that's on you, but I'm letting you know up front, we're recording this meeting. So as this meeting's going on, you see the look on their face, all their eyes is twitching and they don't know what to do. And then after that, they had to have a whole superintendent's meeting to see about removing the mission to get him expelled. So we're in that meeting, we're recording this one too. So as it all came out, we're not gonna expel him, we're gonna give him his back dates for, I said, we know you don't give his back dates for his tutoring, because y'all already know that y'all messed up. So we're leaving out of the meeting, and the mother, I took her to lunch, and she said, but you understood what they were talking about. I said, man, I'm gonna let you know something. I've been through what you've been through. And I shared with her, I've had been indicated twice. I said, and they do not care about your little black brown boy making it, passing. They're just looking at him as, we don't want to waste our resources because he's not worth it. I said, I want you to know, you have to not be afraid. I said, call me if you need anything. I said, make sure you get your stuff. If you take a paper there, don't leave your original. Make them make a copy and you sign and stamp it. If anything, any correspondence, don't let them email you, you get that in hard copy. Because when they start with the email, I said, what's this, and this, they can't find that. Okay, I said, so it's like, never mind, listen.
What detailed conversation, but
I'm sorry, go ahead.
couple of other questions. And I know that we were talking about resources. I definitely want to make sure I shout out SOBLI members here and get to we want to know a little bit who you are. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but it fits into the theme for tonight.
So, good evening, this panel is awesome, so I'd like to have everyone's contact information. So, my name is Odessa Lachlan, I'm the Director of the Office of Minority Health in Suffolk County.
Oh, you know this.
Okay.
I do.
We'll talk after.
That's right.
Within the Office of Minority Health, we address health disparities, chronic disease conditions, and like you mentioned, mental health was not one of those things that we were addressing. Because we have a division of community mental hygiene, however, they were not getting to communities of color. So I said, let's have mental health forums in our communities, and so it has been happening throughout the years in Suffolk. We're trying to get more information out there. We have a multicultural advisory committee, so it has representatives from the different mental health resources, behavioral health, so substance use and mental health. And we push to advocate for communities of color and marginalized populations, those from the LGBTQ plus. So please connect with us. We have a forum coming up on substance use because our communities have been left out of that conversation too. Harm reduction, we've been left out of that conversation, and now we're seeing an uptake in overdoses in communities of color. So I'm gonna keep you all posted. Please get my information.
We have Narcan back
Yes,
here.
I have some from T and Guided is on the map.
That's right.
I definitely will be again on that stuff. So thank you all. This was awesome.
Thank you, Andrew.
And all good. I do a lot of research on mental disparities, 15 years about research. I used to be the director of equity for Nassau County. I'm no longer there, but I'm now at Hofstra University. So, yeah.
And so because everybody's equally it's important, can you just say your name and yes, you
Okay, my name is Tanya. I don't really want to do an introduction. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Well, I just said it's Tanya.
Kenya. Thank you.
My name is Albert Flores, like you see I'm pronounced, I'm basically what you would consider a macro social worker. I do community organizing work full time.
Thank you. Next.
Oh, I thought it was just. Hello, my name is Dan Sternis. I work for New York Cancer and Blood Specialists. I actually do have a minor background with social work working for Pride for Youth as a sexual health services provider. And my job title at the time was to pretty much help provide, I guess, services to gay, Black men who were at risk of HIV. And yeah, I'm just here to support.
And then what do you think?
Harry, I'm a UL resident, and I work for Nassau County Department of Arts and Recreation and Acquaintance of Warrington.
So it's a meeting down there. Thank you. You wanna, we heard from you, but we didn't know your name.
Oh, Wander over. That's my wife.
That's it. Okay. Brilliant. And so we do have some guests here. Do you want to introduce your team?
So that is my top peer. She is the most excellent of my team. And she has worked with CNG for
3.5 years.
3.5 years and continues to work tremendously with the community. She does well with our individuals in our crisis respite as well as our clients who do come in for clinical help. Acute and chronic. And she is amazing.
And you have one more person with you?
Yes, she's my data analyst for our program within CNG.
And how long have you been at CNG?
So I'm going on 2 years. So let's hope they do.
My sister used to work for CNG. That's did outreach in the community.
There's so many programs in there that is underutilized.
Yeah, you walked in right on time. Can you just ask the people's names?
Hi, Suchin.
So this is the part where we're at the end and we know that you talk personally to each other, so please, there's water up there. We're gonna be like picking up stuff and I'm turning it over to him to really close out.
Close out real quick.
There you go.
You know, we wouldn't be who we are, if you don't, make our sales pitch, right, at this point in time. So if you're not part of the Urban League, we are always looking for new members, so we do have the QR code up here as well. You can scan that, see that, fill that out, and join and be part of the movement. You know, we're doing a lot of good stuff, good work here. This initiative right here is one of them, and we'll continue to come out with a lot of good stuff. We have an equity report that's coming out in September, and that's gonna be talking about a lot of the disparities and the things that are happening on Long Island. So please make sure you do come and be a member of the Urban League and join SOBLI as well. Like I said, we have a bunch of different action teams in the initiative that we're really pushing. That equity profile is actually coming out of the work that we do with SOBLI. So you know, we can always everybody has something to offer, right? Whether it's just, no, we're not doing this right, or yes, we do this right. The solutions themselves, we're always taking everybody. We're always open the arm. If you want to join SOBLI, you want to join the action team, we have a advocacy and policy action team, health, education, housing, and economic action team as well. So we're always taking more people. All right. So then now you guys can go
Now,
ahead.
they're marching around.
Yes, we all network this.